This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest. He is one of the most genuine people I've met. He's a distinguished optometrist with an entrepreneurial spirit, and I'll call it optometry with a heart. As a consultant for leading companies in the industry, he significantly shaped the optometry landscape. He's founded Partners in Profit. It's an organization to empower fellow optometrists in their business pursuits. He is the optometrist and owner of Wichita Optometry. Please welcome Dr. Chad Fleming. Chad, welcome.
Thanks, Ankit. It's nice to be here, and thank you for the opportunity just to hang out and talk a little bit of shop and maybe talk a little personal and just see what we end up discussing today. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're one of the folks I've been excited to chat with on the podcast. So, like we do with all of our podcasts, we'll start off with the same question that we ask everyone: what was the most important thing that helped you grow your empire, your practices?
I learned it in optometry school, and that is something that it took me years of education to realize that I was learning to learn. And so optometry school taught me that I'm never done learning. I need to continue to pursue learning, and continual learning is the key to success. So I think it's just always being willing to have the mindset of growing, always have the mindset of being willing to learn from mistakes, and then, having a vision and just being resilient and being just bent on hitting that vision and knowing where you want to go. So I'd say that's the general kind of flyover of where I am today compared to where I wanted to be 20 years ago.
What building on that a little bit, tell me something that you may have struggled with at first, but then because you kept learning, you were able to solve a problem, turn a corner, have some sort of growth. Like, can you think of an example where you're like, man, I just can't crack this nut, but then all of a sudden, like, oh, you kept going at it, you didn't stop, you kept learning.
I think it was the leadership nut. I walked into it having some experience in leadership, experience in, being a captain of the team, being AOSA president back as a student, just a lot of little things that I was put in the place of a leader. And so I came into the practice feeling pretty confident about that, and ran into staff that were my mother's age, staff that had always been doing it a certain way. And I was humbled in the fact that, hey, I got a lot to learn about leadership, and I've got a lot to learn about myself and emotional intelligence. And one of the things with emotional intelligence is being self-aware. So I think that was a good setback for me that says I've got to be a better leader, got to be a better communicator, because my mom taught me how to communicate. She says, Chad, you just always tell the truth. Well, the bad thing is that she didn't teach me is you don't brutally tell the truth all the time. You have to tell the truth in a way that doesn't hurt people's feelings and is considerate of them, and get the point across and communicate, but do it in love. Don't do it in just the brutal, what's on the forefront of your mind. So leadership's the biggest thing. It's great after leading like I have. I'm still reading books and learning and going to seminars and just diving into how to be a better next level leader.
Yeah. So let's jump into that a little bit more. I'm curious about the emotional intelligence side. How do you really end a long day, you're working, seeing patients, you've got, maybe payrolls coming up. So you might have tight payroll, might have tight budgets. And it's just like someone messes something up that causes a redo or remake. How do you keep your composure, not be like frustrated or maybe like a little too direct with that feedback? Was that something you had a challenge with? Or was that something you felt with? I know sometimes a lot of folks struggle with that, especially, I struggle with that sometimes.
I think it took time. It took time to realize that you don't give grace until you understand grace. And I think in my personal life and growing and understanding what grace is, I've been able to extend that and also to put myself in the shoes of the staff and now other doctors that I lead and realize my journey was not full of home runs and no mistakes. I had people that were obviously patient with me, including patients. I mean, I messed up prescriptions. I got diagnoses incorrect and had to reroute those. Or, I didn't make everybody happy. Yes, I had a great growing practice, but the reality is that there's still areas that I could improve on. So I think getting down to the end of the day, understanding who you are and being, like we said, emotionally intelligent causes you to just say, hey, is this the end of the world? No, it's not. And I think, I really think kids has taught me probably of anything. It's taught me the most humbling part of my life is being a parent. So that's helped me be a better leader, in my practice.
I've got to echo that. There's so many times where it's been like, I can't do it. It's not working. I've got to try something different now. And it's helped me in my work setting. But has that happened to you ever? Like
Oh,
you say, so tell me a story about your kids. Like what have you learned from your kids as it comes to leadership and optometry?
well, I learned that I'm not in control. So I had the false sense of control before kids. And then I still feel like I can control things. So if I get upset at a staff person or I'm trying to control a doctor, I'm not being effective. They're getting controlled out of fear and not a control out of love. And the difference is that love is going to propel them to behave in a way that they're doing the things I want them to do. Fear is only going to get them to do the things I want them to do while I'm around and while I'm, um, in their face. And one of the things I like to joke about is I want to be the smart, lazy guy, meaning that I've wisely invested into people such that I don't have to work all the time managing them. And so if I can work my way out of management, then the system is keeps going and you just have to oil it in relationships and oil it in making sure that you're communicating in a way that drive somebody that they take the initiative. So kids taught me that in my first one right off the bat, we adopted. I've been married for 28 years and we went through some infertility and then decided that, hey, adoption is the best way. So we did that. And in adopting my first child is a, strong minded, just, oh, what do you call that? Strong willed.
Strong willed, yeah.
Yeah, and the strong-willed individual, it's like if I tell him you're going to do this, he's going to do the opposite, even when he knows that's the thing that he should do. And I realized that through some difficult things in watching him make decisions that I didn't agree with, that I'm not in control. And so it's taught me to love him in the space of now being the coach instead of being the one who's the player and being able to control how the game is based on my effort, based on all of that. It's not me. It's him running. And so my kids have been, I love them. It's been great. It's taught me a lot about myself, but it's definitely made me a better leader and a more compassionate one with grace.
Yeah, and if I'm just reflecting back what I heard some of the key things there were grace what is actually, let me ask a question. What's the difference between grace and forgiveness to you? Is it the same thing? Are they synonymous or is there a difference?
Forgiveness is when something happens to you and it's just a sense of somebody wronged you
Okay.
in some way and you do forgive them. Um, and that's a cause and effect. Grace is un, undeserved, unearned kindness to where you're just extending something that somebody doesn't deserve. They don't even maybe know that they're getting, and you're just looking past maybe an acute concern for a much bigger picture and you are choosing to basically forgive that concern. But I think it's different in the sense of forgiveness. You always think of like you and I or have a disagreement and I call you a bunch of mean names, and then I come back and, ask for forgiveness.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it almost sounds like your approach to leadership is, we said emotional intelligence, but that means being patient, giving grace, showing love, and it sounds like showing the love is also just showing that you care about them.
It
Yeah,
does, and don't get me wrong, and I hope the listeners don't get me wrong in the sense of it doesn't mean don't enforce and don't
yeah.
have boundaries and don't stick to what you say. I mean, there's a piece of integrity in that, and you do what you say you're going to do. And so it's it's some people say so basically, Chad, you just say lay down and let everybody run over you. And that's not it. That you don't get respect in that. You still have to have boundaries, you still have to have a backbone, you still have to confront. It's just the way that you do it.
It's interesting because I'm reading a book right now. It's called 10 to 25. I forget the author's name off the top of my head, but it talks about children from the age of 10 to 25, how to get them motivated, how to do those things, and it almost verbatim says what you're saying. It talks heavily about the mentor mindset,
Yeah.
which is set a high standard, but show them that you're going to help them and care about them and get them where they want to be. And yeah, ultimately, you're right. The whole control thing, you don't control folks. So it's interesting to hear that because I was reading that separately. You kind of come across that in your years of experience.
Yeah.
That's cool. Um, so what was something you ran into as you were growing your practices? What did you run into that you didn't expect that you were surprised about?
Acquiring new practices and the difficulty of merging the two practices together from a teamwork standpoint. The way of doing things was very ingrained of practices that we purchased. So there was a little bit of a surprise of how much the staff were indoctrinated to the ways of how things were done. And then the surprise of what different offices see as baseline for acceptable or baseline for excellence in their practice. That probably surprised me some.
How did you work through that? It seems like an interesting problem. It seems like a tough problem, especially if you're coming at the perspective of giving grace, setting a standard, and being patient, but at the same time, um, you just bought a practice. At some point there has to be some financial pressure there. How'd you reconcile that? Well, tell us about that a little bit more.
Well, I learned that I had to move people and put the players in a different position um, than what I had been doing. So I made the mistake of, hey, they've been doing a really good job at, this location, the front desk or the doctor's assistant. And what I did by the time we got to our third location, I think I started, no, our fourth location. I started moving people. So when we got to them, I would interview them because they would be done with their job from the previous owner. And then we would be hiring them back on. And when we hired them back on, I would say, if you come on board with us and we hire you, you will be working at a different location. So what I'd do is maybe we bought a smaller practice. They had 6 employees. I would take and break those employees up, putting them at different locations. So they had to travel a little bit. Some of them, it was actually closer to home for where we were located, and allow my current team to have the bigger influence on the new team member instead of having a team that had been together influencing one of my current staff when we moved them over there. So it was more of a moving people around to control, their control goes again, to control the influence that the team had, the Wichita Optometry team had on the new employees.
Interesting. Yeah, we found something similar when we tried to expand the culture. That was tough. We would do something similar where it would just, most of our staff we would have the majority of our staff there with fewer folks there, or move the old staff to other locations.
Yeah.
It's definitely tough nut to crack.
Culture's king. I mean, when you start to scale it, when you start scaling, there's a lot of practices and a lot of doctors that look at it as a formula, and it's not. There's different formulas and different things that can be successful, but culture is king. Culture is what creates the success in scaling practices.
Yeah. By the way, I hear that as one of the common themes with doctors I'm speaking to
Yeah.
and how they create that culture. It's really interesting to see that. Um, so quick question. One thing I always like to ask the guest is because one of the common challenges folks are facing right now are increased labor cost and flat or going down reimbursements. Are you experiencing that? And if you are, how are you dealing with it? And if you're not, how are you able to not feel the pain of that happening? So if you can share with us anything you can share around those two things.
First of all, I chuckle in your question because, and you and I have gotten to, uh, create an authentic exchange early on, in just us communicating. And why I find that question funny is because you made an assumption there was even another path to where we weren't getting increases in employee costs and increase or decreases in reimbursements. I think that to ask that question, even to leave that open, is uh, a needle in a haystack because we are seeing increasing costs. Everybody's seeing increasing costs. And in fact, we're in Wichita and Textron's here and they're on strike. And I go to my house. I was driving here to, do this podcast and people are on strike and, people want to get paid more because of inflation. People want better health benefits. So yeah, we're seeing where the cost of employees was about 28% back in the day. And I call it back in the day because that's when you look at that to where, and it's easily over 30%. I mean, you're pushing around 31, 32%. So I think what we've done in continuing to stay a very good practice when it comes to the business size and the margins is our cost of goods run around 19%. And that's unheard of in the industry because you will talk to consultants, you will talk to large buying groups, and they will say, if you can even if 25% would be a mark to shoot for. And so I think that some of the things we're having to do to be innovative is what, like the partners in profit and taking a lot of individual offices who haven't sold out to private equity, putting those together and creating a purchasing organization, not a buying group. And I know there's some subtle differences, but a purchasing organization has the power to take a negotiator within the organization to go and not have a menu list of pricing like, okay, you've got X% on this company, X% on this company, this lens is X. But what you can do is you can go buy and sit at the table with private equity who have, 100 locations. The group purchasing organization that I founded, we now have 130 locations. So now I get to sit at the table and I get to bid for and get pricing on, we go extremely deep in one area, frames and lenses. And so we even created our own private label with a very high end performing lenses that have the partners in profit lasered on the lens. So
Oh
we
wow.
get the highest performance, but we also have our own lens in the sense of being able to just, work with that if that's a need within the group, to working with a fantastic branded company that partners with us really well and gives us a ton of attention because we're not 5 locations. We
Yeah.
are 130 locations. So that's helped push cost of goods. We've been around long enough that we've seen people who are a part of that group being able to push their cost of goods down. So that's how we battled it. Every time there's a negative, you got to throw in a positive there. So if cost of something goes up, you got to figure out how are we going to offset that so we can continue to run a business, not run a hobby. Always joke I think it was Dave Ramsey, give him the credit for, do you have a business or do you have a hobby? Because a hobby doesn't make money. A business makes money. And so you got to continue to make money in spite of scaling that business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like your approach to it. It's those are really impressive cog numbers, by the way. Those
Yeah.
are, you like you said, they're I've most people I haven't seen really most people lowest I think I've typically seen is like 20 or 21%.
Yep.
19 is
Yep.
really good.
And
So,
19's up from where we were running, but that's a whole
oh,
nother story. Yeah. If
I,
it's there,
yeah,
and we run a lot of managed vision care, and most people say you can't be profitable in the optical. And I say, and you have to choose what you want. Do you want profits, or do you want your dad's old country club of doing the way things have always been done? You got to be innovative, and you got to be willing to think differently.
yeah, it's well, they're a future guest. They're actually down the road from you in Kansas City. But they were talking about, they're talking about how they do direct ship to patients, which is totally unique in the industry, right? So I was like, oh, I'm curious to dive into that. So I'm looking forward to that conversation with them. So
Yeah.
it's really neat to hear. Maybe something in Kansas. You guys are doing really unique things. So,
It may be,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah the So I'm going to ask a slightly different question now. Is Chad, what's your why? Like, why do you do this? Why do you grow the businesses? Why do you do the the group that you founded? Why do you do all of this?
Man, that's a deeper question than just the surface of it, because there's a lot of pat answers you can give. But as you and I have spent a little bit of time talking and just prep for this podcast, I mean, I've got to answer it in my authenticity to who I am. And I had a mountain. I'll call it my first mountain. And this was everything that I thought that I wanted in life, from the bank account numbers to the size of the practice to, I find it interesting in your title of Building Empires. I thought I wanted that empire, and I saw that at the top of the first mountain. And I will say what I do it for now is my second mountain, and it is adopting the three kids from Ethiopia that my wife and I did has just continued to change my perspective, and my faith drives a lot of what I do. And there's a verse in the Bible actually that talks about, to much is given, much is expected. And I just believe God has blessed our practice, and God has blessed me and my family with monetary gifts, that He has given us the responsibility to do things in life that give back, do things in life that love others, and do things in life that show people that life is more than just what you build. Because honestly, you get to the first mountain and you look and you realize that that still doesn't fill you. And so you can build the empire, but the empire, um, it doesn't fill the void in the heart. And so that's why I do what I do. That's my mission. The people I'm around, giving them jobs, giving them an opportunity, helping them walk through life, and then utilizing the the 19% of cost of
Yeah.
goods. So that's more in my pocket, more in the other pockets of others. But it's not for, bigger houses, bigger cars. It's for people. It's for missions. It's for how can we bless others? How can we be a part of being part of their story? Because life's difficult. So I could go on with that. I know that's not what this is about, but you asked the question. So
Yeah.
I'm going to roll. I'm going to roll with it.
Yeah. No, I'm always curious to see why people want to grow. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Yep.
That was really cool. I like that the first mountain. It's like, okay, you look around. It's like, well, now what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was interesting. That now I'll ask you this: you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm curious. You described it almost as you were at the top of the mountain, and you still have the valley in your heart. Those are my words, not yours. But do you still have that now that you where you are now? Do you still feel like there is? Well, I still feel kind of not as engaged, or I feel like not as much purpose. Like, how do you feel now? You kind of
No,
described the first mountain was not as fulfilling as you thought. How do you feel now?
no, it's not. I am in the valley now, and the
Okay.
valley is not. It's not a bad place. It's a place of rest. It's a place of solitude. It's a place for regrouping and preparing for the next journey of of what God has me on. And so it's a good valley. It's not a bad, it's a pause of reassessing and finding out what is my purpose. So now that I've gone this far in life and this is where I'm at, what is my purpose in the second mountain of, um, my goals, my vision, my outside of me? And I say my, and I feel like the second mountain is really not about me. It's about taking what God's given me and created me to be and just living that out for others outside of myself.
Nice. Well, appreciate that. Thank you. Uh, I'm still feel like still climbing the first mountain, so I got some ways to go. But I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe I can learn something from that too. So, what are you excited about in the future? What excites you either about optometry, about what you're doing? Just what excites you?
Um, well, I'll speak to optometry first. What excites me is we are building. So I'm the principal owner of Wichita Optometry, but we have some smaller percentage younger doctors that we're working on creating a round table and bringing in doctors, more of our associates to own and perpetuate on what we've been doing for all these years. That excites me because I'm a teacher at heart. I love to coach and mentor, and I want to raise up some of these others to have the same opportunities and perpetuate private practice in what's best for the patient. And so I like that. That excites me about optometry. It excites me about optometry, of where we're headed with our as taught language in various states in regards to our training and what we should be doing. I mean, went to school in Oklahoma, graduated in 2002, a long time ago. And, I was doing, SLTs, PIs and, YAGs 20 some years ago. And now I'm in Kansas and yeah, by law, I can't do it. So it makes no sense. We should be doing it. And so I'm, that jazzes me as far as where we're headed with that. I think that's a really good direction to be going.
Yeah, I think you're right. The field seems to be pushing more towards that,
Yep.
more towards medical, more towards expanding the scope of practice. So, what about anything else exciting you? Anything else you want to share with the group, or is that uh, anything personally or anything like that that you're excited about looking forward?
Two things come to mind. The Partners in Profit has really been exciting for me, and then coaching. So I coach basketball. I coach an AAU team, and that's been pretty exciting. So that's been giving me life. Partners in Profit has been giving me life because I've watched. So I create in creating Partners in Profit or founding it. I kind of realized I had some. Things in the industry that I didn't like that I wanted to redeem. And part of redeeming was I thought as a group, you shouldn't have to pay to be a part of it. You shouldn't have to pay to play. So created a no membership fee. The other thing is that I don't like about groups is it's usually to get the benefits, you have to do X number of volts. So if you come in, the ones we want to see succeed, like these early, somebody coming out of, they've been in commercial practice for 10 years and they're starting up their own practice. They either got to pay to play or they got to pay a lot more for product because they're smaller. And it just gives me life to be able to have these smaller practices that are paying the exact same thing that I'm paying as a part of our group, haven't paid a thing. It's all pro the optometrist, and we're not taking a dollar from them in regards to making them successful. And just the gratitude that has been given is very rewarding for feeling like they really want me to succeed and they really want me to do good. So that gives me life to be able to mentor and help somebody else be successful. And because I always wanted to go into kind of coaching and consulting, but I never figured out a way to do it where I didn't have to go sell myself to a colleague and they had to pay me. So it took
Yeah.
me a while, maybe I'm a little slower to figure out a model that I could get compensated to do that, coach and consult all along, and it doesn't cost them a dollar. Actually, do I get paid? Yeah. And the way it's structured is our partner vendors, they're compensating me. So I get to be a coach consultant for a member and get compensated by a vendor. And I don't work for any of the vendors. So I could tomorrow pivot from one vendor to another vendor. So there's complete freedom in that. And I like that because there's a lot of headhunting for guys like me and gals like me that these vendors want to put on their payroll to speak, to be a part of them, to be ingrained with them and speak to their colleagues. And I just want to keep, I guess well, my top core value is freedom. And I like to run free, and I like to do my thing of people not telling me what I've got to do this, or I have to recommend this. And it's like, if you don't have a good product and you don't stay up in the technology and stay innovative, then you're not going to get a recommendation.
Now, that's pretty smart, and it sounds like it's a win-win-win for everyone, right? The vendors, for the practices, for the organization. So that's that is pretty. It's a unique structure. So I like the way you presented it. I think the nuance there between what is a buying group versus what is someone who's going to negotiate the deal with you as one company is very different. I like that nuanced approach.
Yeah. And one of the things about that too is it's been hard because it's been a slow growth, which is fine. But because of some of our arrangements, we can't market necessarily our partners unless we're under NDA because of some of, well, let's just say this on Kit that we have 19% cost of goods for a reason. So I think the numbers speak for themselves in regards to the partnerships and the arrangements. And so I can leave it at that.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. So let's shift gears just a little bit, give a little bit of more insight into what makes you tick. Um, can you give me a couple of key moments in your life that you felt like really shaped you? Could have been lemonade stand at the age of 6 is the common one I like to use, or a college class, something along those lines where you felt like, you know what, this really helped me form who I am as a person.
A defining moment was when I was in my mid 30s and um, I let go of myself and what I thought I wanted. And I said yes to um, adoption. And I tell my kids this, and that wasn't an easy decision. I am extremely thankful and humbled that my wife and I decided to do that. But for a while after, dealing with, hey, it doesn't look like we'll have our own biological children. And there wasn't a whole lot of dealing with that as much as there was, I guess, well, she was working with Marshawn at the time. I was building the practice. I mean, we were making good income. We were doing good. And I thought, you know what? We'll just make a bunch of money and give it away and let other people, do what they're called to do. And I realized that that was me being very selfish because I was afraid of letting others into my family and the inheritance and what at the time I thought I built. That changed me. That changed me when after adopting our first child and then our second and then our third, I mean, that was a defining moment for me that made me a better person.
And I know that from friends who also have done that, it is tough doing adoption. Not only is it, so you said you adopted someone from Ethiopia. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Three different kids, three different
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, and you've got different cultures, different. I mean, I'm assuming that they're also African American as well. So there's a cultural differences there.
Oh
That's a
no,
lot.
they're not African American. We were schooled on this. Very
Oh,
good.
okay, sorry. Yeah, please tell me.
They're Ethiopians. So it's kind of like calling Jamaican African American. They're Jamaican. And that was Ethiopians were very clear. They said, we are Ethiopian. We're not African American.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I appreciate that correction. Thank you.
So,
But that's a lot to take on. Well, especially little kids are hard enough on their own,
oh
let
yeah.
alone dealing with the cultural things that might be there, and just what goes on with adoption. So I can imagine that really was hard and rewarding at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is, but it's been much more rewarding. It is difficult, but raising kids is difficult. I mean, as people listening are probably chuckling if they've got kids because they know. But there's yeah, the adoption has been great. It's been great. I love my kids and I love the opportunity to do that.
Now let's shift gears just a little bit. Let's go back to 4 days after you graduated OD school. What would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Man, uh, chill out, dude. It's gonna, it's gonna be. I still am. I still working on it. I was wound pretty tight coming out of optometry school. So I look at that and I think, well, some of that has helped propel success, but others of it is worrying probably way too much about things that were not in my control. So I would say that just to chill out. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about anything else you want to share. Like, what do you do outside of work? Anything other activities you're into, or what gets you excited? What do you do for fun? Obviously, with 3 kids and 2 businesses, and minimum at least 2 businesses that we've talked about today. What do you do for fun? Like, tell us about yourself.
I need to do a better job of doing things for fun.
Mm.
I need to have more hobbies. I do enjoy hunting. So I do that. I'll go on some hunting trips, hang out with some of my got some of the best friends who are also optometrists in the Midwest. So I like to go hunting. I don't do a good job of really taking time to do some hobbies. My hobbies right now are my family, and so I got into coaching. I grew up loved basketball and played a lot of basketball, so I decided to coach the boys because they enjoy basketball, and so that's my time to hang out with them. But um, yeah, I wish I could answer that question better. Um, I like to read. I read a lot. Um, but I really don't have a good answer for you because I've struggled with my dad and I grew up didn't have a good relationship. I actually hated my dad, and we reconciled it when I was in my mid 20s. And I hated my dad because I came from a background where he constantly was working, and then he'd come home and tell me if I didn't learn to work that I would not be successful and that we don't have money. And so I've got to work. That's what he always said. And so I became a workaholic myself. And so that's probably something I've had to undo. And so that question is a lighter question, but I think it hits a spot in me that I am working on that and I'm trying to do a better job of having more margin and I'm doing better than working 70, 80 hours a week. It's just not, that's not, yeah. Anyways, more than you wanted to know,
No, I appreciate you
but,
sharing.
but that's me, man. I'm broken. I don't got it all together.
Well, I think people will be relieved to know that other folks are going through something similar. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And real quick for the audience, margin in this case we talked about before the podcast. It's not money margin. It's time margin. Correct. That's what you want
Yes.
more of. Yeah.
Yes.
Wanted to clarify that for the audience just in case that it wasn't clear. I can empathize with you too. Like my, technically I'm a first generation immigrant. My parents were, and it was very much like, hey, you gotta make it. Like you don't have many choices here. Like you gotta make sure it works. And so, did I go in the field that I wasn't my first choice? Maybe, probably, but it paid the bills for a while. It got me where I am now. So it's been fun. Um, but I think um, I did want to ask you for you off of, the call. You said you like basketball. Do you play? Did you play at all in high school or college?
I played in high school, and then my college story is I had offers D2 and
Okay.
NAIA. I also had offers in golf and football, and decided to go golf so that I could play Division One. I'd always had a dream of playing D1 sport. I grew up in sports, and
Yeah.
golf was that ticket for me. So I went and played golf at a mid-level Division One, and then they had a tryouts for the basketball team. So I just said, "What the heck? I wonder if I can play ball with these boys." And so I
Yeah.
went and tried out and made it, and that's just kind of
Nice.
my little yeah. So way back when, but for me it was good. It just told me that reinforced that I could play. And it was a hard decision for me. And so that was kind of cool. But yeah, I did play basketball. Um,
Are you a Thunder fan or are you more of a college guy?
um,
You do not really watch basketball as much.
no, I do so much coaching with
Yeah.
the boys and traveling that I love. My son, my 12-year-old son, and I went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year in Indiana and watched Boston wrap that up, if you remember. And
Yeah.
then we watch a lot of NBA, but I don't have a team. He's a Celtics fan. I don't know how in the Midwest. He's a Boston Celtics fan and a Baltimore Ravens fan. And I'm just like,
Okay.
where everybody around here is Kansas City Chiefs fans for
Yeah.
football. But so no, I don't have a team, but we do watch a lot of basketball because my boys. I mean, I follow what they do, they want to do.
Yeah. I know the feeling. So, Chad, where can people find you? If they want to reach out to you, they want to get in touch, where can they find you?
Well, I think the biggest take home point, if in this podcast, as far as wanting to invest in your practice, you can find me at Chad at pipgpo.com because it's a invitation only group, but basically what everybody's invited. We just vet people, the owners out to make sure that they're paying attention to their optical because we don't want them. We've built a structure that runs on its own. All the frames are put on as a frame board model, so they don't have to pay anything for it and they can get a lot of income out of it. Like I said, it's a new school versus the old school way of doing it. And so Chad at pipgpo.com. And we'd love to have you as part of the group, and love to talk to you about maybe how we can make your cost of goods push down towards that 20%. So that's how you get a hold of me.
I appreciate that. And we'll put that in the show notes for folks as
Okay.
well. And I think we have your LinkedIn and your company site as well. We'll put that all in the show notes so people can get in touch with you.
Sounds good.
Yep. So thank you again, Dr. Chad Fleming.
Thanks, Ankit. It was good. Yeah, it's easy to do an interview. You've obviously done this more than once because you made it like just a conversation between friends. So I appreciate that. So thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to be on your podcast. It's been good. Thanks.
Of course. And thank you, audience. And if you learned something, enjoyed it, please share with someone that you know and subscribe. Thank you again, Dr. Fleming. And this has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires. We'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.